Welcome, Buff fans. Another edition of the Primetime Night Owls. Myself and Matt Smith. Matt, it's nice to see you. I'm Brian Howell, by the way, of the Bullet Daily Camera. Matt Smith, Colorado analyst. And Matt, nice to see you. Since we've last saw each other, what was it, last Thursday, I guess, for practice. The
Yeah.
Buffs have had a couple of nice additions in the transfer portal we're going to talk about. And it's also spring game week. Spring ball wraps up on Saturday, so we're going to get into that stuff. But first off, how was your weekend? Any takeaways from your weekend?
For my weekend, watching the Masters was fun. Rory coming up, doing it like he did it at Augusta, and as emotional as it was, that was a really cool, just sports moment. Got to watch some golf, but yeah, just Brian, everybody has their own stuff in their lives, right?
Right.
If it's not one thing, it's another, and so yeah, this has been the 2025 has been the year of dealing with some of that stuff for me too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been fine, buddy. How you doing?
Good. I will say locally, sports wise, Nuggets fire their coach and then win three in a row and claim the fourth seed. So we'll see how they do with that. But I'm not. You're a bigger NBA guy than I am, and so I know you've been following that closer than I have. But I've been good. I mean, my kids are in high school, and so there's always stuff going on. And my son had a baseball game on Saturday. My other
Right.
son's dealing. He's a track runner, distance runner, and been dealing with a little bit of an injury, so he's been out a little bit. So I'm disappointed I haven't been able to see him run, but been able to watch my freshman play some baseball, and so that's been fun.
Good, buddy. I'm glad. It's always good to soak up those years because they go by
Yeah,
so quick.
they do go by quick, and yeah, I do cherish the times when he still wants to play catch with me, and and it's still a lot, so that's good. It'll
Yeah.
dwindle, I know, so it's exciting, but yeah, lots going on, and spring game this week, Matt. It was a beautiful weekend, and it's
Stunning.
not supposed to be a beautiful weekend this weekend, of course, because Coach Prime has not had a nice spring game yet, weather-wise.
Oh God, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, have you seen the
The fork,
forecast?
yeah, it changed. It did. And I
Yeah,
I just hadn't really put to it. Well, of course it's gonna be bad weather.
I
That's the
have
spring
not.
game.
I have not looked myself, but I did see Jake Schwanitz from DMVR posted a little
No,
bit
it's
ago.
supposed to be like rainy, snowy on
Yeah,
Saturday.
that's supposed to be
Yeah.
like 49 and some snow.
I think in
Yeah.
Boulder, I thought I saw like 37 on mine today. You know, what about the app? Which app can we use that says it isn't going to rain?
So I'm looking. I've just got this is the weather app that's on the iPhone. Friday, high of 30. This is Boulder. Friday, high of 39, 45% chance of snow.
Yeah.
Saturday, high of 47, 40% chance of snow.
There we go.
Like,
Okay,
come
so
on,
Friday. I
man.
was looking at Friday. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Like, come on. Can we? We had snow 2 years ago. It was pouring rain last year. Uh, I mean, Coach
That's a
Prime's,
spring game, buddy.
yeah, but that's. I remember. I don't remember what the numbers now, but I remember 2 years ago when it snowed. I wrote something about how rare it was that there was weather on the spring game. I mean, Coach Prime's due for 65 and sunny.
Well, the universe is apparently saying otherwise, Brian. You got to pay attention to the signs, right?
Well,
But
we're
hey,
still a few days away. I'm going to hope for it.
yeah,
Thursday,
yeah.
by the way, 69 and sunny in Boulder. Can't you shift that for Saturday?
I think my input on forecasts is probably good from here on out for CU football.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Well,
I
spring
don't
game
think.
is
Yeah.
spring game is coming up on Saturday. Um, and I guess the Buffs have been through 12 practices. Um, what are your takeaways at this point? I mean, we're going to get more into it when spring is over and kind of our overall takeaways. And obviously, we're going off of what we've seen on Well Off and not what we've seen with our own eyes, which we'll get to see finally on Saturday. But any big takeaways you had so far?
I am recalibrating my expectations coming down off the high of last year. Having two top 10 picks, whatever Shador ends up becoming, I mean, we could even talk about that more today. Todd McShay and Albert Breer, you two gentlemen are on my shit list, I swear. Anyway, yeah, I've had to recalibrate. And it's not just losing those two guys, it's losing a ton of starters. In total, how many starters will they have lost from last season? Do you know off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head. I think it's like seven on defense. You got uh, all four receivers and Shador. So that's five on offense. You lose
I think it's at least five defensively because it's Cam,
well, it's more than
Travis,
that. I think it's seven on
Shane,
defense.
both linebackers, and who else?
Well, Chidozie,
Chidozie. Okay, Chidozie, and then there'd be one more. So who would be that last one?
Travis.
I said Travis.
Okay.
The
Um,
linebackers, Travis. Oh,
Shiloh.
Shiloh. Shiloh. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, Shiloh.
So
Okay, so
it's about I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head, 12, 13 starters total.
yeah, so that's a big deal, right? And even in today's college football, where you're going to constantly turn over the roster, losing not just that many players, but that many guys who are experienced and had been in Coach Prime's program for a long time, understood what's expected of them, understood what they're looking for, the standard that they've set. It's a big transition year, and it looks like it right now in spring
Yeah.
practice to me. You are
Actually, you know
lacking.
what? Real quick,
Yeah,
throw in Isaiah Augustive, who's no longer here. So
sure.
it's probably close to 15 starters.
Yeah,
So
they're lacking almost all of their real offensive production from last year. Like Draylon Miller came on at the end of the year. Omarion had a couple of nice games, but most
mhm.
of their offensive production is gone. And you could probably say the same about their defensive production by and large on the whole, except for a couple of players and a couple of
Yeah.
positions. They get they get very fortunate they get their entire secondary back. Even though Hood and Hodge haven't practiced this spring, I think we're all pretty comfortable about their corner room. It probably needs to be a little bit
Well,
deeper.
their entire almost their entire corner room, not secondary.
What do you mean?
We said they get their entire secondary back with
Oh, that's what I meant. Corner room. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'm sorry.
aside
No,
from
no, no.
Travis, obviously.
Right, right. But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like you've got to feel pretty comfortable in that you've got three guys in Hodge, McKinney, and Hood that you can trust. Right. So if we're just looking at it from the position of, I was thinking about this. Coach Prime says he wants seven guys on both sides of the ball. I was trying to think about, and when we talk about seven guys, seven dogs, right? Seven guys, I know what I'm going to get out of them.
Yeah.
How many would you say there are offensively right now?
Well, I like whoever's going to be at quarterback. I think it's going to be Salter, but there's talent at quarterback. So I'm going to say one there. Draylon for sure. Omarion for sure. Um,
Okay. Yeah, I would just say
Seaton.
coming
I
off
mean,
the injury,
Seaton.
I would probably hold off Omarion coming off the injury is probably all I would say.
I would still put him there.
Okay,
For me,
that's
Seaton would
fine.
be Seaton's four. Um, yeah, I mean, I want to see a guy like Zy Chrysler before I put him in that group, but I would say four
Okay.
off the
How
top of my
about
head.
defensively? There probably should be more, right?
I mean, Preston, DJ, and Colton.
Yeah,
I'm going to put there. I think Arden Walker is a guy.
I agree.
I think Sam Okunlola, when healthy, is one of those guys.
Okay.
Um, so that's five. Who else would you put there?
I would probably, instead of Okunlola, I would probably have Anquin Barnes in there. I think he really came on strong. You know, everybody talks about Jaheim Otis, but Barnes is from Alabama too. I think people
Yeah,
forget that a little bit because he was kind of buried under last year's class. But, Barnes really came on strong. And from what I've seen, looks like he's probably a starter as it is
yeah.
right now. So I think Barnes is probably in there. Um, you
Amari
know,
McNeil.
yeah, and I would hope that because Amari's been kind of like an
He's up and down. He
EKG. He's
can
up and
be.
down.
He absolutely can be one of those guys.
So it looks like there aren't seven. That's what I'm trying to say. Is it looks like watching practice from whatever they're showing us, and all I'm going off of, as we talked
Mhm.
about before spring started. I
Mhm.
really hate to make judgments because we don't get to be out there for practice, right? They're
Yeah.
not going real game speed in spring where you're knocking everybody's head off every play. It's just not entirely representative, which is why obviously the idea of having another team come in here for spring ball is so attractive because you
Yeah.
actually have a real litmus test to see what is and what isn't real. When you're just
Mhm.
buffs on buffs for so long, you can lose perspective, and, especially if you're not very good. Truthfully,
Yeah.
that's the truth. So right now,
Coach
I'm see-
Prime's even said that, hey, sometimes you get a false representation of who you are because your
100%.
defensive line looks really good, but it's because your offensive line stinks. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's exactly what he said, but that's the point is that you lose that perspective.
there's a lot of turnover. Okay. I think they're struggling for depth at some
Mhm.
positions. Some positions look strong. They are not, at least to me, as strong as maybe I thought they were going to be heading into spring ball. And maybe some of that was still the high of last season talking. And then eventually reality is setting in just a little bit more. But the good news here is that now they have the extension done. They allegedly have more resources in place from what we've heard. They have hired Marshall Falk. They've bolstered their coaching staff. There's a couple other names that haven't been made official yet, but they're coming. And so
Yeah.
they've got some of that stuff in. So I think they're better equipped to go to the portal without Travis and Shador right now than they were after the season. And I think emotionally better equipped because now okay, everybody's in. Ink's dry, everybody's in. Now we build. And
Yeah.
hopefully they're able to clean up because I think they need to in some areas. I'm seeing a team right now that it's just going to take some time to develop because you do have a hodgepodge, and when you don't
Mhm.
have those leadership flagpoles of Shador and Travis and Shiloh and Cam and the leadership that they had on last year's team, LeJohntay, Jimmy, go down the list. Look, I mean, other guys got to assume those positions. And let me note that, those guys didn't become who they were overnight or even in one
Yeah.
year. It took a couple of years. So without them, it's going to be a process. And I think there's some of that going on right now for sure. However, I am encouraged because I think that overall they have a better idea of what they want to be and who they want to be. I just think that since the reset, it's going to take some work to get there from what
Yeah.
I've seen personally.
Yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot about what the staff thinks about who's currently here in
Mm-hmm.
the next couple of weeks they go out and grab certain guys. I think to me, I don't know about you, Matt, but uh, you know, okay, there was two transfer additions this last weekend that we're going to talk about. So I'll transition to that. Xavier Hill, offensive lineman from Memphis, that has been a 2-year starter at Memphis. He started his career at LSU, played a lot of right tackle last year, also a lot of left guard. Um, to me, going out and getting him is it's a nice addition, but it also tells me they don't really fully like what they've got on the offensive line right now. And it's such a hard position to recruit. And there's not a lot of great ones that are in the portal because the great ones usually make some money and they stay where they're at, or they make some money from a program that has a lot of money. And so there's not a lot of them out there. But to me, Xavier Hill coming here tells me they don't fully like what they have at offensive line because they just went out and got a plug and play starter. So somebody that's been playing all spring is now on the bench, in my opinion. And I don't think that Xavier Hill will be the last one. Sincere Brown, the other one, coming in from Campbell, I thought it was a really nice addition. I look at him differently. I don't think that necessarily means they don't like what they have at receiver. I think I knew they were going to get receiver because their numbers are lower than what you typically see in recruiting, and you grab as many great athletes as you can at receiver. So I don't think that he necessarily took someone's job, but I think he bolstered that receiving group. How do you look at those two guys? Those two transfers coming in.
Yeah, I think we both understood, and I think even brought it up either last week or the week before, that this offensive line is not going to be the same come opening day of fall camp.
Right.
It's just not.
Yeah.
And as you brought up, he won't be the last one. I'd be really surprised if he ends up being the last one. And as a result, you'll probably end up seeing some guys leave. Like it's a
Yeah.
numbers game at that
Yeah.
point. I look at a guy like Tyler Brown right now. I mean, I know that Coach Prime is, an incredibly important figure in his life, but if I'm playing the numbers game, if I'm Tyler Brown, I'm kind of looking around like, well, based upon what I've seen so far, I don't know how much room there is for me here.
Right.
So it will be interesting to see how all of that plays out, right? Sincere Brown, they don't really have that skill set, like the 6'4" dude who can just, run like the wind and go up and get it. They don't really have that guy, the Will Shepherd replacement.
Yeah.
That seemed to me like maybe more of what they were going for there.
Right.
I would just say they have some interesting options. They have a lot of unproven talent. So while I say that there's a lack of this and a lack of that, I know that's what a lot of fans are going to hear, and they'll be the ones in the comments saying that we're haters and snakes in the grass and all these people.
Right.
That's not what we're saying, right? I think it's interesting because they're looking for specific things, and if they don't have it, they're going to go get it. And to your point, you said it perfectly. We're going to learn a lot about what they have and what they don't have coming up here in a couple of weeks. And if you just watch things based upon what they're showing us, they don't
Yeah.
have a few things that they're going to need to find because, and I think here's where you and I are coming from. Coach Prime has said multiple times that he believes this is going to be a better team than last year's team. He has
Yeah.
kind of adopted the talking point that they had a couple of great players, but not a great team. I would kind of push back on him a little bit because I think they were led by a pretty damn good defense last year, more so than they were led by those two guys throughout. If you looked at the whole season and looked at that, sure, those guys played a huge role in it, but don't think for a second that the games their defense didn't play well in that they won. You know,
Yeah.
they had to play well defensively to win last year.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm confused at the statement that we're gonna be better than we were. Maybe it's he believes that, and he typically doesn't say stuff that he doesn't believe, or maybe he's just kind of putting it out there to maintain the excitement. I don't see the logic behind that personally, and it's not a shot at him, or it's not. I don't believe in him. It's just I don't understand that based upon what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah.
So let's see if they go correct that and eventually get there. But make no mistake, if you're saying you think you have a better team than a team that, let's be honest, is a Kansas State game away from 10 wins, I'm just talking about near misses, right? Like that's a Kansas
Hmm.
State game away from 10 wins. You're talking about a team that you believe can win 11 games. I'm not seeing that right now.
Well,
That's my
frankly,
personal opinion.
better than last year is you're in the Big 12 title game.
Right.
I don't see a team that's in the Big 12 title game.
Not right now.
Not right now. And that's where, and again, you're right. I mean, people make comments and I get it, but where I base this stuff off of is what we hear,
Right.
and I believe it was you asked Coach Hart a couple weeks ago, are you guys, is linebacker a spot you guys go look in the portal? And he says, we're looking everywhere. And I don't know if it was you, but I think one of the other assistants last week was asked, was it Mathis? I can't remember who was asked, are you going to look in the portal at your
Hmm.
spot? And they said, we're going to look everywhere.
Yeah.
So they're always shopping is my point because
Right.
they're always trying to get better. And I think part of it is that they know they can get better,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
that
that's not a
and that
secret.
and that they and I also based on things like you were texting me the other day, the speech Coach Prime gave to the team the other day. They're not real happy
No.
day in and day out with what's going on. There's clearly some things missing there this spring, and that's what this spring is all about. And that's part of why in this calendar you got the spring portal and all that. You can address those things, but this to me is a team. Um, I go back to 2 years ago, right before the first spring game under Coach Prime. He was asked about the offensive line, and he kind of paused and he goes, "The team we have right now is not the team we'll see in the fall."
Right.
And I you could probably say the same thing right now. I think there's probably some not widespread like it was. I think there was a lot of portal movement on this team 2 years ago after that spring game. I don't know if it'll be as much. I think there's a lot of starters, Matt, that aren't in Boulder yet.
I agree. I 100% agree at several different positions.
Yeah.
And look, it's about creating realistic expectations because some of this is to be expected coming off of the transition that they just came off of.
Yeah.
Okay. We know that at a couple positions specifically, they just didn't have a ton of depth last year, but they were able to get by. Linebacker, tackle, right? We go through down the list, tight end. Those are still issues. Running back,
Yeah.
those are still now that's a bigger issue than it was, a week ago. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. And it doesn't mean that they can't get it done. But what it does mean is that I don't see the vision of them having the better team right now. And if they're serious about that, then that will be reflected in the amount of work that's done on this roster over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But look, I think the failure here would be to set expectation for this season around what you did last year. I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but that is the effect that a Shadura and a Travis can have. They don't have a game breaker on this team. Travis was a
Yeah.
legitimate game breaker. That doesn't exist on this
Yeah.
team. They also don't have a truly elite quarterback on this team. I think Caden Salter is showing some nice things, but he's not, in my opinion, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe he ends up being that, and I'm not saying he can't get there. My point is that this is what you have right now. So if I'm projecting out based upon what you have right now, I don't know, Brian. I don't know where I land because I feel like it's, as you just brought up, it's not the team that you're going to have when everybody gets back together. So judging them based upon what they are right now would be unfair. But I would say, based upon what I'm seeing right now, a bowl game would be a pretty solid year for these guys.
Yeah.
Which, oh, by the way, I don't think is a huge drop off from
No.
where they've been. I think it's just okay. It's a reset from last year, and then you keep moving up the tracks, but as opposed to the first year where they really did want to build some excitement and they wanted to reestablish the winning expectation and standard and set their standard so high. That's just what they did. I think part of that really killed them because in the first of all, it did from the public eye, okay, because it invalidated a lot of what they did because they did set those expectations so high for people
Yeah.
who didn't understand. And I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do. I love the standard. The standard is the standard. One thing I know about Coach Prime, he's not going to change. However, I would just be a little bit softer with some of my rhetoric so I didn't end up painting myself into a corner that at the end of the year I'm not going to want to be in. And that's okay because you shouldn't have the expectation that Colorado instantly is just going to be able to sustain. That's not
Yeah.
how this stuff works ever. And
I,
let me sorry, one last thing. A quick example for non, pre-prime Buff fans. In 2016, CU won the Pac-12 South. Okay, got to 10 wins. There was an outside shot that they could go to the playoff, right?
yeah.
If they had beat Washington, they would have had as good a case as 3 or 4 that year.
Yeah.
So we all came back in 2017 expecting a lot of that momentum to continue because they did have a lot of returners, right? It was a change at quarterback, still a talented guy, but they had some returners on that team. Now, they lost a lot of seniors. They did, which guess what? So
Yeah.
did this team.
Yeah.
And they started hot, then they just tailed off because there wasn't a tangibility, a legitimacy to them. And so I'm I want to make sure they guard against that right now by going out and addressing some of these areas that, hey, look, if it's not up to muster, as Robert Livingston said, we need to have hard conversations.
Yeah. Uh, so I'll say a couple things. When you mentioned there's no game breaker, I would sort of disagree with you in that I think Draylon Miller and Omari Miller have a real shot to be game breaker type players on offense. But to your point, there's not a best player in the country guy on this team. And so you're obviously going to miss Travis Hunter. I agree with you what you're talking about as far as expectations, although I also like what Coach Prime brings as far as he's never going to
Right.
back off that, and I love his moxie with that and saying we're going to be better, and because you got to shoot for it. And if you're not there, yeah, you can call it a disappointment, but again, I think you can paint the narrative in a positive way if you just miss on that. And yeah, to me, Matt, if they're 6-6, 7-5, and they're in a quote lower tier bowl, that's still for the first time in over 20 years back to back bowl games. That's a phenomenal achievement for Coach Prime if he can do that. And so that's the narrative that you spin it. Like, look, I'm the first coach in 20 years since Gary Barnett to take this team to back-to-back bowl games. And for me, when I look at this team right now, Matt, and I say, yeah, I'm agreeing with you that I don't see them being better than last year. It's because of what I'm seeing right now, and it's not there this spring. That's why I want to reserve judgment on this team because I want to see what they do in the spring portal because I think there's a shot that I do think that the team that starts August is going to be better than the team that's ending in April.
Oh yeah, it better be.
So it better
Yeah,
be, but
yeah.
that's where like maybe they are better, but I need to see what they have first, and we don't know what they have yet. So if they're going to be better, it's going to be based on some things that they do between now and August, getting some guys in the portal. This team right now that they have in the spring is not better than what they had last year.
No, and I don't think any one of us actually expected that.
Right.
Okay, that was never my expectation. I never had that, but I'm bringing it up because again, I'm just talking about the rhetoric stuff. Like bowl game should be more of the vocabulary when we're talking about messaging for this season, in my personal
Yeah.
opinion, at least publicly, just because I think it's unrealistic to look too much higher than that based upon the turnover. Maybe they catch lightning in a bottle. Maybe it all goes well, and they pick up some massive pieces, which by the way, I expect them to. I
Yeah,
expect them to get better. They've proven they will. They've proven
yeah.
they've got guys in the building already. They've gotten better in the last week. So it's not that it's not going to happen. What I'm saying is I think the floor for this team is actually here. That I think that's probably the better way to say it. The floor for the team I see on the field in the spring is lower than I think they want it to be.
Yeah.
That is what I believe is the truth. So we'll see how they go about correcting it. But let's maybe we should highlight some of the areas that we think things are progressing, because I do think there are some. I do think there are some. Overall, I'm not sure how many of them there are. Quite frankly, I do think there are some.
I'll say this, that I think that one of the keys for them to being better is whatever they can get offensive line wise. That's one way that I can see them potentially being in that conversation, being better than last year, is that if you upgrade that offensive line enough and Caden Salter or Juju, whoever's playing quarterback, has time to work and use those receivers, now your offense can be explosive. And I do think that's one area, Matt, that I look at and say, I think that they're a little bit better offensive line than they were at
Yeah.
the end of last year, because, you know, I think Jordan Seaton as a sophomore is going to be better than Jordan Seaton as a freshman.
Yep.
I think Zy Chrysler is probably better than um, guys you had last year.
You pick. Yeah. Yeah.
I think Xavier Hill is an upgrade over guys you had last year. And frankly, you talk about all the turnover and everything. Most of the starters from the offensive line are back. I mean, Kareem Harden started most of the year last year. Philip
I mean, he
Houston,
hasn't been with the ones in like 2 weeks though.
well, he's been hurt.
Oh, okay.
So,
Has he? I had no idea.
but he's still on the team. Philip
Okay.
Houston, I know, is still out, but he's coming back this year. He was your starting right tackle last year. Tyler Brown started most of last year. Cash Cleveland was not your regular starter, but he was the last 3-4 games. So, you're looking at across the board. You've got a
Tyler
lot.
Brown hasn't been with ones either.
No, he hasn't. But I'm just saying that the guys that were starting games last year
They're
are
still
all
on the
they're
roster.
still on the roster,
Okay.
with the exception of Justin Mayers and Hank Zelinskas. I think those are the only two,
Okay.
starters that you lost from last year. Um, and we know it wasn't a great offensive line. My point is, I think they're upgrading that line with the Zy Chrysler, with Mana
Monotai
Taimane,
Maione. Yeah.
Xavier Hill. So um,
McGill, maybe.
Zary McGill potentially
Yeah.
at center. So, I think they've upgraded that line. So I think that's one area where you're better. When I look across the offense, Matt, I think the other areas you're not better.
Yep.
I think, and
Maybe tight end. Maybe like slightly.
maybe
Yeah.
tight end, but I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about the least used position. I mean,
I know. I know.
you know,
I know. I'm
whatever.
just trying to be objective and be real with you about
You're
which
right.
rooms.
You're right.
You're right,
But
though. Quarterback, but the room overall, quarterback, you are probably better, but only one of those guys gets to play.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, top to bottom of the room is better,
Right.
but the top is
It's
not as
not
good as
as
Shador.
good. No.
So, and Shador took almost every snap last year. So you're not as good at quarterback. Running back, it's the same guys as last year, now minus your starter and leading rusher. So as it stands right now, as we sit here and talk, they're worse at running back.
Yep.
Receiver, Jimmy Horn said at Pro Day, he kind of laughed. He goes, "They're really good." He goes, "But I'm going to be competitive here, and we were a better group." He was he's being competitive. I get it, but he's right
Yep.
because of the fact that they were experienced. They were seniors. Their four guys are going to the NFL, and so I love the receiver room, but it's not as good as what they had last year.
Yep.
And so those are three big areas where you're not as good. But I think the offensive line, if you're better, that's a huge area that you're better in.
Massive. And God, I can't remember. Maybe I read it somewhere.
And
Maybe
real
someone.
quick, I'm sorry to
Yeah, yeah.
interrupt.
No, you're fine.
I'm not saying they're bad at those areas. I just don't think they're better.
No, they're not
I
better.
think they're a little worse at those skill positions.
I would agree. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't even think it's an argument. So
Yeah,
I think that's where, you and I have both been scratching our heads at that comment that he's repeatedly made, that they'll have a better team. It's just not. It hasn't manifested yet. It just hasn't manifested yet, and maybe it ends up doing so, which would be great.
yeah,
But I can't remember where this comes from, so I apologize to somebody if this was yours and I'm not attributing it to you. But someone or somewhere I read, somebody said this is a team that is going to have to win because of their O line as opposed to because of their quarterback. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like this is a team where they're maybe it was Gunnar White. Was that Gunnar White? Maybe that was Gunnar White who
Well,
said
he
that.
did
Like,
say something like, we have to. He made a statement that was very definitive, like it's going to be on us more so than last year.
right, yeah. So
It was
maybe that
something
was
like
what it
that.
is.
Yeah.
And look, it's the point of attack. So offensively, I cannot tell you that they're ostensibly a better team, which I feel like is a fair. First of all, I feel like it's an unfair comparison in the first place.
Right.
Okay, I think it's
Right.
totally unfair.
Yeah.
So that's why I haven't really understood that comment because, like, what? How could you possibly even say that right now? I don't get it. So, look,
Well, the reality is there's what, 3, 4 program, 10 max programs in the country that could lose the Bolitnikov winner
right,
and the
the
Johnny
Bednarik,
Unitas Award winner and be just as good on offense the next year, right?
yeah,
So I mean, like in Oklahoma when you lose Baker and then you got Jalen Hurts.
yeah. No,
All right.
I think we all understand the blue bloods. I think
Yes.
we get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look. So defensively at corner, just overall secondary wise, probably hard to make that argument. Okay. Linebacker, they're definitely not better. That I can
Right.
promise you.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive line, they might be. They might be. I mean, they brought in some good pieces there. It sounds like that might be the most well performing group of camp from everything that I've picked up on. I don't know about you, but that
Yeah.
group sounds like they've had a nice spring ball here, which is encouraging because there are a lot of returners on that side of the ball. And the two things that they've got to hold above all else is stopping the run and running the football.
Yeah.
And except for a couple of Saturdays and maybe a Friday last year, they stopped the run pretty well. That
Yeah.
was a huge improvement, just a massive improvement. And I hope that is still an area, that is one area, if nothing else, where they should actually be able to sustain some momentum because they do have a large core of that group returning.
Well, and obviously you miss key guys like Chidozie and Shane Cokes
Sure.
and but yes, I agree with you. I think that that's a group you look at and say, yeah, I don't know if they have someone as good as Chidozie, but I
No,
like
they
the
don't.
group as a whole. And I still like that edge group. I mean, I think, you still have Arden Walker and you have Tajay McCoy and Keaton Wade and, Sam
Okunlola.
Okunlola. So you got guys that can get after the quarterback. So I really like that front group.
Yeah, they might
It's,
be better.
I really like the cornerback group. I think that even without Travis, I think DJ McKinney, Colton Hood, Preston Hodge, and if RJ Johnson is as good as what we're hearing in the spring, that's 4 guys right there that I'm like, yeah, that's really good. So it's, to me, it's inside linebacker and it's safety. What do you really have at those 2 spots? And you probably, I think there's some players. I think Tafik Bayard is a really nice pickup. Might wind up being one of the biggest key pickups of the entire offseason. But those are 2 spots I look at and say, all right, what are they going to do in the portal?
Yep, I'm with you. Look, again, it just goes back to they've got some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pretty sizable portion of this roster that should probably be turned over starting Wednesday, truthfully. So we'll see. They've done an incredible job filling out and maintaining and retaining some very important pieces that have this team, to me, around the floor of a bowl game.
Yeah,
Hopefully, by the time camp opens in the fall,
yeah,
that's what the hope is, right? Like look, set whatever expectations you want to set out there. I'm not going to tell a fan how to fan. Truthfully, you want to expect national championship. That's fine. You're probably going to be disappointed. So I just kind of like to move forward with, hey, what's the baseline of my expectations? And I think if they can find a way to get a baseline expectation of a bowl game, which they do
Mhm.
in the building anyway, I just don't know if that's what they've got out there.
Yeah,
So we're going to find out. And the schedule sets up a little bit of like a softer landing because you do have home games to start the season, which I think is going to be very important for this group.
yeah.
Multiple weeks at home instead of
Hmm.
massive rivalry games, or the defending national champion runner up. So I think it'll be better to start the season to figure out what you have. But in many ways, that's where in my head I'm like, that was 2017 too, if memory serves. Like there were a couple of cupcakes, and not that there's even a cupcake on this schedule, quite frankly, or There might be one,
We have
but
Delaware.
there might be one.
I
But
yeah, I don't know how. I think they're a pretty solid FCS program. So
but that's what I'm saying. There might be one.
right, right,
But outside of that, it's not like there's a bunch of easy games. You're going to have to
right.
play well right away. So, yeah, I expect them to continue working to build this roster. Here's a couple things I know. They need more help in the linebacker room. Like they got a couple guys who are a little light in the shorts, I thought, from watching some of this tape, just like a little bit undersized at that position. Definitely need help at safety. Could probably use another corner. Um, yeah, I mean, any help you can get, any legitimate upgrades that you can find on the defensive line, you have to seriously investigate because you
Yeah,
can never get good enough in the trenches. The
right.
one thing that stuck out to me when I watched the college football playoff is all these teams have just gorillas on both sides of the ball up
Yeah.
front, guys who are just
Hmm.
literal game breakers. And that's where the college football playoff is won and lost. So if you are looking to build the team that can compete there, that should probably be where the majority of your resources are being poured right now, truthfully,
Yeah,
is that foundation just based upon that. I mean, giving your quarterback some time to throw, I mean, anybody with a clean pocket, at this level, kind of assuming that the recruiting floor for Coach Prime at the quarterback level has been raised compared to what it used to be,
right.
should be able to excel if they have some time in the pocket, at least ideally, right? And then
Yeah,
defensively, if you can make an opponent one dimensional by the time you hit the postseason, that's how you win football games,
yeah,
especially late in the calendar.
yeah. It's funny. I kept thinking when you're talking about expectations that we ought to flip what last year's narrative was with this year's narrative because right now it's like, oh, we're gonna be better than we were last year. Like last year it was like we just want to get to a bowl game for Miss Peggy,
Honestly, you're
and
100% right.
it's like
Yes.
last
Yeah.
year with the guys
Yeah.
you had, it's like you should have been
Yeah.
talking about Big
Yes.
12 title, and this year you should be talking about let's just get to that bowl game.
Buddy, you,
So
you
it
couldn't have
just
said
it
it any
sort of
better.
flipped. So and to me honestly, and we said it before, but like if they get to a bowl game, everybody needs to look at that as a really good season for this program.
Yes.
That again, he would become the first coach in 20 years to take CU to back-to-back bowl games. To take this program to back-to-back bowl games is phenomenal right now. I mean, it used to be just an annual thing, right?
Hmm.
And CU fans got spoiled for a long time, with Coach McCartney and then Rick Neuheisel and then Gary Barnett. That it was just every year you knew there was a couple down years, and then like Barnett had a couple years, 3-8, whatever. But for the most part, for about that 15-20 year period, they were just one of the best teams in the country. Well, those days are long gone. And so,
Yeah.
to get this program to back-to-back bowls would be insanely good.
Yeah. And look, I mean, if Coach Prime wants to build it back up into that, that would be wonderful. None of us would be complaining. I just don't think
Yeah.
he's there yet.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not a knock on what he's done because what he's done is phenomenal. Nobody could have done what he's done. And
Yeah.
that's objective in Colorado.
Yeah.
Nobody could have done this.
Right.
So I love it and I wanna believe it. I just need to see a little bit more first. And again, we'll get our first taste on
Yeah.
Saturday. It probably won't be much. There's never really much to take from spring games. I mean, outside of Hayden and Welch and I guess Hood, they got a couple of walk-ons as running backs, but at least
Yeah.
they're not going to be as thin as they were last year. Last year was pretty brutal at that position,
Right.
right? I mean, even though
Well,
Harge did a great job, and it kind of unlocked that little wrinkle, right? That showed us, hey, maybe Isaiah can do something else. But I thought I saw Cam Michael
I was just gonna
practicing with
say
the
that.
running
Yeah.
backs the other day.
Yeah.
So I can tell you they're not happy with what they have in there because they don't
Yeah.
have much in that room. Like if there's one room that I'd probably say is a red alert heading in the transfer portal, for me, it would be running back. You cannot. They
I,
have to have at least two backs
there's
out
one
of the
on each
portal.
side of the ball. To me, there's a red alert
Oh,
on both
and
sides of the ball.
linebacker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, and that's okay. Like that's okay. I just want to make sure for a lot of these fans that are alarmists and,
Yeah.
they'll be the ones in the comments hating on us, which is fine. Everybody's entitled to your own opinion. However, it doesn't make you right. I just want
Yeah.
to make sure that I put that out there.
It doesn't make us right either. It's just how we see it right now. Is that
Yeah,
to me, those are the two red alert positions.
I
And
agree.
I thought before Isaiah left, my thought was I'd like to see him get one more back. Now that he left, it's like
You have to get two
you have to get two more backs because
minimum. That's
Yeah,
it. I just
I mean, just
I don't think we need to explain that. You have to get
you
two.
should have to get two, and then inside linebacker, I look at it and it's like, okay, they went out and got a couple of transfers that were all conference at their G5 school, but the, when you watch the videos, those are not the two guys that are just standing out and they've taken hold of that job. And so you've got last year's backups competing with a couple of G5 all conference guys, and they look all pretty neck and neck from what we can
Yep.
tell. And not saying these guys can't do it, but I'm just going off the optics when we watched last year. What happened when CU didn't have Nakai Hillgreen in that bowl game? And I know there's a lot of factors, but I think that was a huge one.
Yep.
Is that Nakai Hillgreen didn't play, and
And they had Bentley.
and you had Bentley, but you got exposed, right? And I think they're a very different team last year without Nakai
Very
and
much
and
so.
Bentley, and there wasn't a lot of time we saw without them, but when they weren't
Thank
on the
goodness.
field, yeah, thank goodness, because I honestly think that had one of them gone down with
Anything?
in October,
Yeah,
I think that season plays out differently.
I agree. I
And
agree.
so I worry about what they have left in the program, or the guys that were coming back that were backups last year, and that these two new guys are not far and away beating them out. And so that tells me that okay, you got some competition, you got some solid players there. They need better players at linebacker.
Yeah, and look, all this stuff, I think if you were to get Coach Prime in a private moment, he'd probably agree with a lot of it.
Yeah,
Um, now,
maybe in a public moment, who knows?
maybe, but not from the guy who says he thinks he's got a better
I
team
know,
than last
I
year.
know.
You know, I mean, like, yes and no. Look, and it doesn't mean, as we said, and as I said, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have that standard. But if you truthfully want to uphold the standard, there's no bias that can get in the way. It's
Yeah,
all about the football. It's all objective. So if you're truthfully talking about winning a national championship at the University of Colorado, folks, these are the conversations that you need to start having.
yeah,
Okay? You
yeah,
don't go win a national championship plucking a bunch of FCS guys.
yeah,
Newsflash, it doesn't happen.
yeah,
So you have to figure out how else you get better. Do I want to develop? Do I want to hit this way or that way or come up with this avenue or that? But the fact is, and I think we all understand this, is that money rules everything around me right now more than ever in college sports. Did it before? Sure. Were there
yeah,
under the table payments before? Sure. Were the schools with the most money able to get the best players? Sure. But now it's happening legally. That's the difference. Is it
yeah,
wasn't widespread before. Now it's legally, which is why we just saw 4-1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. We talked about this.
yeah,
I laugh at the notion that expanding the NCAA tournament's a good idea. Like, I think it's a terrible, if anything, they should be reducing the NCAA tournament because less and less schools are going to be able to compete. Cinderella's dead. So
that's a whole
now,
other topic because I would disagree with you on that one. I would have a counterpoint to that,
go
but
ahead.
well, we don't have to have the NCAA
No,
tournament
well, no, go
topic, but
ahead.
my counterpoint to that would be that the talent is funneling up to the Power Four conferences, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I formed my opinion looking at as I was watching the University of Colorado women's basketball team that I cover was a first four out team. They didn't make it,
All
and
I'll
I'm
say, Brian, sorry, I want to let you finish. It's an hour in. If people are still listening, they actually like us. So,
that's
go
true.
ahead.
So I'll just say this: that, like as I'm watching some of these automatic qualifiers get in that are net 230, net 180, things like that, that they're not very good basketball programs. And a team and a borderline team, Power Four team doesn't get in. They're much better basketball teams that are not getting in than are actually getting in. So my point is I would expand it because I think that those automatic qualifiers, which are getting weaker and weaker, are taking up
That's a fair point.
are still taking up about 50% of the pool.
So I would say that's a very fair point. However, again, that is really but it doesn't make
It's
it.
not going to change the fact that the number one seeds are going to rule.
Well, what I was going to say is it doesn't make it right that expanding it is a good idea. It just exposes the fact that the current quality of the tournament and the current avenue that we are
Yeah,
selecting it based off doesn't represent what the actual landscape of college athletics is. So while
right.
I agree with that point wholeheartedly. Like,
Yeah,
and it was even the Norfolk State basketball coach I heard the other day. He was like, we're essentially a JUCO now.
Yeah.
He's like, that's what it is. We can get him. We can't keep him.
Mhm.
I've got way more respect for you. And look, that's what it is. And there's going to be a lot of people that pound their fists and get mad about it. But the truth is, this train is already moving. There's no
Yeah.
stopping this train. So what I think the healthiest thing would be is one day for football to break off, because by becoming essentially, minor league NFL, which is essentially what it is, that every other sport is going to get dragged down in the process. Basketball, and how that ecosystem is able to healthily sustain itself, that
Yeah.
has been changed by
Right.
football. And that's just basketball. The rest of the Olympic sports have been altered forever, in some cases irreversibly so.
Yeah.
So I would just say that yes, I agree with you, and I know this was a side tangent that you and I
Right.
like to go down,
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah, I just think
Well,
the point is that you're going to have more talent highly concentrated. And
yeah.
so if you want to talk about national championship, these are the type of conversations that you have to have. You have to look at the best teams in the country, not the Big 12. Not the Big 12. If you want to make,
Yeah.
if your goal is to make the playoff, which is great, that should be your goal, then I think that's one thing. You can win the Big 12 doing it similarly to this path. Okay. I really do. I think you can get there.
Yeah.
National championship, it's like a whole nother level.
Yeah.
So
Well, I don't think
I
we're at
just, I
that
just,
level
my,
of
no, I
talk.
don't
We're
think
not
so
there to
either.
talk about that with CU yet.
Well, if it's a
But
better team than they had last year,
you're right.
then that's what we're
That's what
implying.
you're talking about.
So
But
I just, that's where I say I would soften that rhetoric, because you could really only start to hurt yourself with what you've got on the field. There's no point to it. Like,
yeah.
you're not benefiting by doing that right now. You're just not. It doesn't mean your standard's not there, but by making that part of your messaging, you're going to identify yourself that way. And I promise you right now, that's not the standard you want to be held to. Unless it is. And then
Yeah.
everything, and then you have no problem with what we've said on this podcast. Because if you
Yeah.
really believe that, and I want to make sure, if you're hate listening to us, if you really believe that, then not a word of what we said should be out of bounds or upsetting to you, because
Right.
that is the championship standard. I mean, that's the truth.
Right. And I'll say this though. I also think coaches are they often say things publicly in the media as a message to their team. And I think that Coach Prime does that too. And I think that when you're coming off of what you had last year and you're losing the talent you are, I think that when you say publicly we're gonna be better and your team hears that, they're like, "Huh, he believes in us." I think that's part maybe where it comes from. But the main thing I agree with you that um yeah, like I said before, you got to flip the expectations from what they said last year to what they're saying this year.
You've
You
already
know,
won. He said it. You've
yeah,
already won.
yeah,
You don't have to do that anymore.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you've already established that reputation. You
right,
got to establish realistic goals now. You really do, or at least create some sort of baseline of expectation so that you're not setting yourself up to
yeah.
fail if you don't reach it. It's just I just my opinion.
Well, yes, and so I'm going to set the expectation: get Miss Peggy to a bowl game, and not
Let's do it.
freaking the Alamo Bowl.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yes.
I don't care where it is; just go to a bowl game that's not
Amen.
in San Antonio, and I think that's the goal. So,
Amen.
all right, Matt,
Amen.
we're more than an hour in. We got a spring game coming up on Saturday. We got a couple practices between then, and yeah, we'll
All right,
chat
buddy.
later.
Yeah, we'll chat later. We'll keep it. We'll say we got plenty of stuff coming up this summer. There's
Yeah,
no doubt about it. And look, let's just end here. They have assembled something pretty cool. It's just one of those things where you don't do this overnight. Nobody does. Not to that level, right?
hmm,
So it's important that you do hold yourself under the microscope. So just make sure that you're being honest about what you have in the room. Because if not, I mean, truthfully, at the end of the day, you're the one it hurts the most.
yeah. And hey, this team, if they're going to be better, watch out the next few weeks. See what happens in the transfer portal because that's going to be key for this team being better. So, Matt, we'll see you
I'm
later
with
this
you.
week.
All right, buddy.